Welcome to Storybreakers, the show where we come up with a brand new film idea off the top of our heads. And if you like it, it's yours. I'm your host, Chris Brennan, and with me today to break story is author, educator, and podcaster, Dr. Barney Taylor. Barney, welcome to the show.
Chris, it's a real thrill. I've been looking forward to this all day. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, yeah. And this is not the first time around. You've done a Storybreakers episode from a previous series of ours.
I did. That was years ago. I was trying to think earlier today what year that was, but we did a thing called Left in the Lift, which was a bit like Snowpiercer set in a shopping center, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you're no stranger to this concept, but it's been a minute or so. Yeah. But today is a bit different. So sometimes we come in and we literally build an idea from nothing. Sometimes people like me to kind of throw them a concept. Or sometimes people have the nugget of an idea that they come in and say, I've got this like one sentence, like, can we expand on this?
Yeah.
And we're going with the latter today. Isn't that right?
That is. Now, I mean, I had several suggestions, and I would like us to start developing a thing called cursor. Now, I've even got on the poster, cursor will say, be careful what you search for. And Chris, I want you to picture the scene. There's a fade into a montage of people who are all searching using search boxes on the internet. It's a little bit like Wings of Desire, where the angel can see different people in different spaces doing their own things. So it would be some kind of multifaceted montage of people typing using search engines like we do all day, every day. But the kicker is they didn't have the cursor in the search box. So all of this strings of names and numbers and information seemingly disappears. That's kind of like the basic premise of the story. So where does all this data go?
So all the missed typing, like they typed it in thinking that's in the search box, but they didn't click it. So where did those searches go?
I reckon, I mean, like we've all done it. I do it all the time because like you're busy and you're multi-tabbing and then you think, oh, well, the cursor's here. And then you type something and then you think, no, I have to type it again. Also, it could also include mistyping and misspelling. Okay. And so basically streams and strings of misplaced or lost data.
Okay.
Where does it go? This is my question. Let's begin here. What do you think?
Yeah. Sounds like a trip. It actually, I don't even know where to go with this idea. So I guess my next question is, what kind of genre were you kind of looking at? Like,
what is
like the emotion or the energy that you kind of had when you were thinking of this concept?
Well, I have to say one of my favorite things of all time is post-apocalyptic stuff. I mean, the first film I ever saw on VHS was Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and it's still one of my favorite films today. I love, maybe because I'm English, I love the breakdown of civilization. I love people worrying about things they used to have but no longer have because they're fighting over a tin of baked beans or something. So maybe Cursor is about maybe this string of data does something. I mean, in my original idea, it was absorbed by a planet until the planet could no longer contain any more of this data, and it sent it all flooding back to Earth like some kind of digital rainstorm, and it blew up the internet. So, I mean, there's one way we could go. Or if you like your H.P. Lovecraft, like I do, maybe over time, the actual string of this data spelled out the name of some kind of summoning evocation that kind of summoned a digital demon.
Okay, wow. These are juicy,
dark, I
think. Concepts. Post-apocalyptic totally makes sense. I'm a big fan too. I've seen that Dawn of the Dead. I've seen it live in Belfast with Goblin, the band.
Yeah,
they played it live in the cinema. Some of my brother saw that.
That was awesome.
Quite the experience.
Yeah.
When you were describing it, actually, that was the idea that I started going for. Was like, is it kind of like the data has been quietly building somewhere until it
Mm.
explodes, and we're dealing with the ramifications of it. So that's actually where I was like, my little brain went to first when you were describing this.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to go with the data demon if you want.
I don't mind. I mean, like, and Chris, you know this much better than me. Often the legend is that Italian film producers wouldn't ask what the film was about, but what the film is copying when people were pitching things. So maybe it works if we do the Da Vinci Code meets the Human Network or something. Maybe like we try and sort of pitch it like that some way, in terms of it's about some kind of, I don't know, is there a global conspiracy of some kind? They're always good for a baddie or two. I mean, how do characters work in things like this?
Yeah, because that would be the next follow-up question is, are we following one protagonist as they discover this, or is it kind of a multi-character film? Are we going for, you say Da Vinci Code, an expert symbolist, or I guess that was
what was it? It was a symbolist, wasn't he, or demonologist, or something weird?
Or is it more the Independence Day group of characters who are we're all seeing their point of view from this data catastrophe that has occurred because everybody has just been so foolish with and frivolous with how they've treated technology. So like we'll figure out any way we want to go, but that's the question right now is like, what do we want to have fun with? I will say it is, when we're doing stuff off the top of our heads, it is easier and more trackable if we follow one person's story than have to invent all these others. But yeah, I'm always up for a challenge either way.
Chris, I'll follow your lead here. I mean, one thing I like is that beautiful thing about film where audience know more than characters. Okay. And that's one of the great moments, isn't it, in filmmaking bravado, where we're watching, like if you think about Hitchcock, we would know someone's about to die possibly before they even have any awareness. So could it be that there are a series of events related to this data surge or whatever it is, that a bit like Close Encounters happen all over the world? And then is there someone who spots the significance of something? Would it be a scientist? Or I think it would be someone who's good with data as a central character.
So I think that's kind of where we want to go then. It's more of the overload of misused data and it's affecting the planet. Like you said already, I think like the internet goes down. Should we expand even further and kind of go into electricity in general? So we've just like we're hitting the Stone Age, kind of the reset button that we're hitting with this. Like one last cursor click and it's lights out for everybody.
No, I think so. I've just had a thought, and I'm happy for you to just say no, stop. But what about if the central character is a bookie?
A bookie?
Yeah, someone who takes bets, and because they would be phenomenally good at figures. Now, I don't want them to be Rain Man, because that would just take it too far. But someone who isn't a scientist, because in films like this, it's always scientists who tell you things, isn't it?
That's true. And we would do this from like even the early days of Storybreakers, where we would be coming up with an idea, and I would try to push us towards, let's get not an expert in this field. I was like, why can't we follow a private eye on the first day of his job? Why can't we throw somebody who isn't an expert? Because you can follow James Bond, who's great at everything, and then when he gets captured, you're like, why did you get caught? Are you too experienced to be caught?
Exactly.
I enjoy the underdog protagonist who's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just a bookie.
So it's good because like if you think about things like Dario Argento and those kind of giallo, they normally, the forces of science and sense, like the police, are not the ones who conduct the investigations. It's normally the eyewitness, what they used to call the testimony oculare. So maybe our bookie witnesses something, and I don't want his family to disappear either, and he's going to have to go on a voyage to rescue them, because that's another kind of post-apocalyptic trope, isn't it? What's the Is there a film called 2012, I think, isn't there, which is about the end of the world or something? And
That's right. And that gets surprisingly biblical.
Yeah.
Like Noah's Ark biblical, I mean.
Kind of. And he has to go on a quest to either bring his family somewhere safe or find his family or rescue his family. What about if our protagonist is someone who's more like the guy from The Whale?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with keeping away from the save the family idea, because honestly the stakes are big enough if the entire world went down. Like, you can have this person, just trying to think. So like, I think before we get any further with him, I want to learn more about what actually happened, because that can help us and kind of hop back and forth between protagonist and the concept.
So what do you see with this? What would the world look like to you? What would your opening shots be of this pre-electronic world or whatever?
I think what I would be quite interested in exploring would be that we start with this rapid fire montage of people type and maybe follow that kind of digitally through the wires until we see that it's kind of leading somewhere. I don't know where yet, but we'll figure it out. It looks like it's overloading. And then we cut out and we're with regular characters. And where we'd want to be going then is to have some kind of cataclysmic event that just snaps everything off. Maybe our bookie actually witnessed it or saw something relating to it. And so it isn't really a sense of the government came to him because he's the only one. Maybe he's like, they're like, he's the only one who thinks that this could be something very unique, and he doesn't get it. And so no one's going to believe him. Like, you're just a bookie. What are you talking about? Like,
what do you know? Yeah. No, I like that, because it opens up the possibility then of him spending, or them, because we don't know, them spending the entire film not a bit like, in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where they just don't believe him. And he's saying, but like, don't fall asleep, because when you fall asleep, you're going to become one of the pod people. And they're like, nah. And then they wake up and they are the pod people. And the 50s one ends with him running down the road, doesn't it? Screaming, you got to save me. You got to save me. Look to the skies. So it could be that because one of the things about this is knowledge, isn't it? And traditionally, people know things and the world knows things. So what continent would you want it on? Where could we go with this? I mean, is America too obvious?
America is the staple, but we could go with somewhere different. I mean, we can even go for like somewhere like Berlin or London. I mean, unless we start globe hopping for this person to like track various clues, America is great for the size and scope of it. Like if we keep it contained to Dublin, Ireland, say, and it's like we got to go to Cork, in 2 hours later,
I'll get on a bicycle. Yeah. No, I mean it makes sense, obviously, and also in terms of anyone who's watching who wants to fund this, it can be in any American city or any Canadian city designed to look like an American city. We really don't mind, but I think it needs to be a big place, because when it all goes wrong, you need to see the small details. Now, there's going to be some big thing. Now, before we came on, I was thinking, could it be a reversing of the Earth's magnetic poles? What would that do? But that would just probably flood the Earth, and it would be like that planet on Interstellar, where it's just kind of like water, maybe. So would it be something equally cataclysmic, but not as immediately destructive? So, because like if you and I wake up tomorrow and the digital world has died, we've still got the house we're in. We've still got all of our furniture. It's just the lights don't work and we've got no phone signal. So is it a slow creeping kind of situation?
I actually like that idea, where it isn't like we talk about cataclysmic events, it's not a world breaker, it's just a reset where we now, and it can be people having to confront the fact that they've been so spoiled by technology that now they can't do even the simplest of tasks, like set the fire. I don't know how to do that. Fix this. I don't know how to do this. The car is now electric, or like, and it's basically a computer. So it's like, I don't know how to fix that, you know, and that could be more of where we've actually pushed this because of a data breach of misused data. And it also goes into that, like we're talking about people making mistakes with technology.
Yeah.
So eventually it backfires on them.
Yeah.
And then it punishes them in the reverse, which is like you get no technology because you didn't behave yourself. It's taking it away.
There's a sense of that, isn't there? And then characters, because this is what always worries me about films. Characters can't say to each other what's going on, and another character say, just Google it.
Yeah.
Just look it up. Or I don't know how to do this. Watch a YouTube video. So like, if you can't do that, then it goes, go on.
It is the, I think every writer has that feeling too when they're writing a project where you have to remove the phone from your characters. A lot of times you're like, oh, I have no battery. It's because this is a drama killer. Like that phone in your hand can pretty much solve every misunderstanding, every technical issue. Like you can get out of it. So you usually have to remove that from people, or find a unique way of embracing technology to actually create the drama itself. But usually you have to take the technology away from people because it solves too many problems.
You do.
So what we're going to do is we actually use technology, like the overload of a misused technology, to break the digital world that we're in. And then we're throwing everybody into this this quite quiet, simmeringly calm environment where gradually people start to turn on each other because they've went through the shops, they've sweeped it. Like we saw that with COVID, like how quickly the toilet paper disappeared.
Exactly.
You know, but then we go back into gossip and rumorville, where we're not getting it from online sources anymore. People are going out and like they're just mishearing things. They're spreading rumors about like who has what. And we could actually see this slow descent of civilization and actually stay with that. Like I think that actually would be compelling. I haven't seen a film that treats it in that kind of mature, like realistic way. And then you have this bookie who he doesn't have technology. He's never needed it because his tools were the paper and the pen, you know?
Writing everything down.
So I'm just trying to think of where the plot goes. And for some reason, I just kind of think that they might be able to get it back online, and maybe he decides not to. I don't know. Like maybe we're not supposed to have it. You know, it's like maybe it isn't the. I don't imagine the solution to this problem is turn the switch back on. You know,
no,
I think that doesn't feel right.
There isn't a switch somewhere which people will have to fight to get through, and by just at the end of the film, just as it's all going to go wrong, someone goes and it all comes back on. I like your idea. Like a lot of communities break down slowly because someone says something to someone, says something to someone else, and then they become suspicious or they become jealous. And so it could be in this slowed down, I think the word you used was a quieter world.
Yeah.
It could be that other noises become louder. And so what would normally happen is people would, like we did in COVID, when we came out of COVID, we got a renewed sense of community because we all grew online communities, gaming, cocktail drinking, sourdough, whatever, or mukbang or whatever it is. But
building stories from scratch.
Building stories from scratch, exactly. But is this a case where people would be going out of their houses looking to see what's going on? Because first thing you do is you can't ring your neighbor, so you'd knock on the door and say, is your internet down? So it would be that slow, wouldn't it? It would be the Wi-Fi in the building is gone.
Yeah, and even the more we talk, the more I don't want to globe hop. We could actually, you said keep it in a big city. We could do that, and potentially they could discover some of the truth behind the issue in that city. So we're removing government comes and you're the only man for the job, and it's actually like it is that more communal aspect. And maybe he discovers it, or somebody he knows discovers this area that is just kind of, I'm finding it difficult to define what it is that's physically.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Every time I get the bus into Dublin city centre, there is a point on the route where my phone is on 4G anyway, but will no longer pick up a signal. So I always have to turn my phone off, and it's at a particular stop on the route home. So I wonder whether some of this can be, there's some black spot somewhere, or some dead zone, some digital dead zone that has absorbed all of this.
I think it's the reverse. I think it's a there's a spot or two that is a online zone,
like a hotspot.
Yeah, where you're like, oh my gosh, it's like there's something here where like digital works. Like I can get online here. Nothing else is online, so it doesn't matter. But there's something in this area here. What does that mean? So I like that, because there's something very mysterious about it. And then people could congregate there, which is kind of funny, because if you want to connect with somebody digitally, you have to go next to them to do it.
Exactly.
Defeats the purpose.
Exactly. It's like sending an email to someone who's sitting opposite you in an office. It's just like this madness of it. So does it become, are the themes about things like distance? And is this what the story would explore? How you can live next door to someone, but your world's apart from them, potentially? Because I think once you take out the global stuff, now, obviously through this conversation, the digital demon has disappeared, and that's actually fine. But I wonder whether it now becomes, I don't know.
The digital demon can be our addiction to,
to
digital. So it can be people trying to build their community from scratch, and some people who just cannot take it. Like they refuse and they act up, and they can develop rivalries. Like we can have an antagonizing force come through people's reluctance to embrace this new world, because they have to embrace it anyway. They can't turn around.
Yeah.
But then there's something about the hotspots I really enjoy, because that becomes a place where people would fight for, would battle for, will try to own and possess. You have most people going like, you don't need to possess. We're just building we're rebuilding.
I'm planting tomatoes.
Yeah. And there's some people trying to own the digital space, but for what? Who are you connecting with? But there might be somebody across the world who also has a hotspot. We don't know. It's like, but what are you going to do when you connect with them and you have these big conversations about like, what is it? What are you going to say to them? Like the person next to you is right here, and you refuse to acknowledge them for the pursuit of talking to a stranger that may or may not even be there, which is actually quite unique.
Actually, because Chris, the way you're describing it is what some of what I had in mind. It's a much more like something like the film Upstream Color, where it has a kind of a scientific sense, but it's quite oblique, because we've already described, and you know, and I support you in saying you don't want it to be linear, A-list kind of Hollywood storytelling where Nicolas Cage wakes up, although he'd be a good bookie in this, but he wakes up one morning and his parents have gone missing, and he has to race across the continent to get them, and along the way Mr. Mephisto is trying to stop him. It's much more about, also the other thing is, and maybe this might work for you, most of the time we don't know what on earth is going on. As societies, we are very well informed nowadays, but a lot of people aren't that informed and just don't have a clue. That's why they're so easily manipulated by propaganda and Fox News, because they're just kind of like, I don't want to find out, I'll let you tell me. So
and
a lot of
there was a comedian too that had this really, I forget his name, but he had this really great joke about how if you went back in time and you would, like, people go, oh, like, you went back to the medieval days and you met people, they'd herald you as like this all-seeing God, but we actually don't know anything, because it's like, oh, we have this device that glows and it tells you stories. It's called a television. And how does it work? You plug it into the wall. Like everything is this way. It's like, I don't know how to build it. I just use it. I know how to use the material and the tools, the systems that have been built for me. But I'm actually useless at any of this.
Yeah, no, it's the same. And imagine if you were the same person who went back in time and the king said to you, my son's dying and what can you do? And you can see that it's a tumor or something. You wouldn't know how to operate and take it out. But you go, look, I think he's not very well. But it's kind of so it's the same idea, isn't it? So what we've got then is it a slow creeping? Now, we wouldn't want it to be boring, but at the same time, would it be better? I'm just going to throw this out here because, would it be better as a Netflix series? Would it be better as a episodic thing over 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, rather than a 90-minute thing?
I think it's a great idea that we can take our time and explore this new world. And I think taking the time with it and actually living in that world would be the drive. You do have this narrative thrust for film. Not every film, of course, but once you have that kind of deadline of 2 hours, an hour and a half, there is this expectation where you've got to fill it. Whereas series, you can let it breathe. You can really get to know the characters. You can follow a character who's a side character down another subplot, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that'd be really, really unique. So we could just kind of follow this concept as a 7-part narrative. And because the idea is that people typed in, where did the data go that they typed in but didn't go into the search bar? It's a very ethereal kind of intangible concept. So I don't think we can actually turn around and be like, there's a system here, or there's a there's not like a physical, like there's a box and in the box is all the letters and numbers. Muhaha. I don't think it turns out that way. But I do like the idea of these pockets of the internet that kind of they're very static and they live in one particular space. And we can follow this bookie as he's trying to like everybody, he's connecting with people. There's trials, tribulations. He gets to meet people he's never met before, and they can be from across the street. He can start rivalries that he didn't even mean to, because he didn't know that this item was somebody else's, because who owns what in this new world? Money doesn't matter. Like there's so much you can explore that I think it actually would be better to explore that in a series format. But you can have you can imagine the end of the pilot of episode 1 is the discovery of the hot zone. And then you're like, oh wow, what does that mean? And that could just be building in the background that there's a group of people who are now feuding and trying to fortify around this area. And that could also be where we're kind of driving the narrative too, which is this collision between people who are furiously trying to get back to the way things were, and the people who are just trying to adapt to the way things are.
No, I agree. When you were talking about the hotspot, the first thing that came to my mind is, imagine if it was actually in a hospital. That would add a dramatic element to it. But then I'm also thinking, to counter program that kind of potentially forced narrative, because then characters would have to get to the hospital for treatment, which is a little bit clumsy. What if it was something crazy, like it ended up in a Chinese takeaway, or I don't know, like when I'm thinking of the bookie, I'm thinking he's one of the guys who would have been in Goodfellas, who's taking gambling bets, and so meets lots of people, or is known by lots of people. But once money becomes worthless, he still knows all these people, but their reason for living is different. Or doesn't.
Can I throw out an idea for the location of the hotspot? Because what I actually had in mind was basically a flat surface. Maybe there's a well there, but it's just a bare land, and then people are going to build upon it, and they want to make something out of this area. If you have the hospital, I get it. You can kind of create narratives and dramas around it, but there's something unique about it's just like somebody's walking and then and it starts up, and you're like, wait, what is this? And it's just this bare area. And then they can actually make the borders of it so they could test it to the point where now they've built, like, they've marked it with lines on the ground. What do we do when we mark a territory? We start building a wall around it.
Yeah, we fortify it, don't we?
Yeah. And people are like, why are you building a wall around this? Like, who owns it? Like, oh, but it's mine. But nobody owns anything anymore. And immediately there's people forcing this old principle of ownership. Like, I'll give you money for it. Money doesn't have value. I'll give you food for it. And it's like, no, it's owned by everybody. The internet wasn't owned by anybody. This shouldn't be owned. But you have this bookie with his network of people, these kind of Goodfellas-esque individuals. That's their natural sensibility, which is, let me get something, let me sit on it, and then possess it, and then dole it out for power and positioning. And they view these hotspots as that potential. But I also enjoy the idea of, like, but there's nothing on the other side, but there could be. And then they actually debate, like, that let's name this bookie so we don't have to keep calling him bookie. What should we call this guy? Shane?
Shane, can do. Where are we? Where is it set? Now, obviously, I'm talking about all of these things, so it sounds like it could be New York or something, but I have no real relationship with the geography of New York. But Shane could work. I mean, is he a man? Is he American? Given his role, he's likely to be. So, is he Italian American or Irish American? Or
if we are in America and we're kind of getting the story where we're going to have people against each other, I could imagine that you actually have somebody who could be, maybe he is Irish or he's English and he lives in America.
Oh, and he's undocumented.
But he's in this community who he doesn't belong with either. He's kind of like, he's found value there. He's not a big shot there, but so he's always struggled for being an outsider in this community anyway.
Yeah.
And now everybody is basically an outsider, but they still try to rub that in on him. It's like, it doesn't work that way anymore. And they have that natural inclination to kind of own a spot and take advantage of it. And maybe he's breaking away from this mentality because he's never born into it. It was just kind of circumstantial. He ended up having value for the role that he had.
Yeah.
But now he doesn't understand it. And that could actually be, he could be the one who finds the hotspot.
That's good. So, I like that. I think he could have a very unglamorous film name. He could be something like Keith. There never seems to be any characters in films called Keith.
So imagine Keith then finds the hotspot. Yeah. Where would he go? He'd bring it back to his collaborators and his network, and then he starts seeing them do their thing. Yeah. And he's like, "But who are we connecting to?" He doesn't get it. Like, he's like, "I don't understand this." And meanwhile, he could be developing real relationships with people in the communal sense for the very first time because he's never done this.
Yeah.
I like you said that he's undocumented. It could be good that he is illegal, because that means he never would have made deeper connections himself. So now that it doesn't matter, he starts developing relationships. He starts building his life in the way of, like, it's like rebuilding while these guys are still living the old life. And then that's a divide that he's having to balance himself. Is he keeps getting pulled into this other world where they're scheming and scamming to, like, own the internet.
Yeah.
But everybody else is just getting on with it. And he's like, I just want to go with them. Like, this feels more earnest, organic, and honest. And I don't understand this. And people, like, you could have rivals show up and try to take it, and now they're fighting over it. And he's like, but what are you fighting about? Like, what is anybody fighting about? This is just nothing. It's just digital noise that you guys are trying to reestablish. It feels like it has value, but it doesn't. It may eventually, but at the moment it doesn't. And I think that seems like a very nice environment to put a character for about 7 episodes as you go forward.
Yeah, I was watching someone earlier on YouTube playing the zombie survival game 7 Days to Die, and they have a channel where they just obviously it's post-apocalyptic. They rebuild houses, That's the only thing they do in the game. They've got it on creator mode, so they just regenerate communities within this thing. So what about if Keith gets in with a group of people who want to set about turning the city into some kind of garden? They'd need to start doing that anyway, start growing their own food and things. But what about if there's some kind of aesthetic impulse? That, I mean, when you're talking, I had in mind that he takes up painting and he starts painting urban landscapes. Now we can throw that out the window. That's just a thought. But it's kind of what we're describing, I think, is something which isn't about what it is, which is quite nice. So it's about, it's about the gradual collapse of society. But like, what would you and I do? We might just, if we found some nice food, we'd have a barbecue, because we're not gonna start a world war. We don't have any weapons or anything. So I wonder whether part of this is an impulse like that, where they start, I don't know, creating nice urban spaces. Or another idea I had is when people find a hotspot and then they communicate, their message goes out at the end of an episode, and it starts in a completely separate place where another hotspot by another group of people has been found. So it becomes this kind of episodic exploration. So Keith's only in one episode. Now I'm just throwing that out there for total insanity. So the episode always ends with someone saying, "Who are you calling? There's no one out there." And then the next episode starts with someone hearing this thing, but they're in Karachi or something, I don't know, or the Antarctica or something silly. Just a thought.
No, I really like these explorations of these threads. I do think that we should stay with Keith. I think we should stay with that community.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
But like maybe episode 2 or 3 ends with, while they're literally like arguing about like it doesn't matter, like no one's there, and then somebody responds.
Yeah, they hear a voice,
and you're like, what? And then cut. So it's like somebody is out there, but who is it? I don't know. And it gets back to that statement I made earlier, which is like you're sacrificing your local community for a larger unknown one across the world. You don't know who this is. They can't help you in any way. So you're actually pushing the people away who you could help and who can help you in a hope of somebody from far away could help you. And I think there's something really nice there that does speak on another layer as well. There's even fame, celebrity, online recognition, and you're like, yeah, but you don't know your neighbor.
Yeah.
I've got fans online, but the people who live next to me, I barely say hello to. But who's actually going to help me in this world?
Yeah. Like, I mean, legendary stories of people like Marlene Dietrich, who were supremely recognizable faces going into hiding when they were elderly, effectively because they couldn't bear people to compare them with images of them in their 20s. What about if one of the people in Keith's house is a reclusive celebrity of some kind who has spent the last few years refusing to engage with the community, but embarks upon some kind of reawakening? They don't become a star again, but they just somehow engaging with this new community. Their status as a film star, for example, doesn't matter anymore. They're just Dorothy who lives down the corridor or something, because we need other characters, don't we?
We do. That could be a character for sure. I think where we'd find them is in what you were describing about like the hothouse idea of you're rebuilding, but it's in a communal nature where it's built on planting crops and harvesting, and just that they're tearing down and ripping up streets and all collaborating together. I think that really works very well with the dichotomy of these people fortifying a hot zone and trying to keep people out. So you've got this Keith who's in the middle of this divide. Do you build the wall to keep them out, or do you build the the harvest, so invite everybody in,
Oh, yeah.
So then you can have lots of those types of characters, and you can explore those threads because it is a series. I mean, and the beautiful thing about a series is you can start it and do a flashback for like the first 10, 15 minutes of who this person was before the lights went out.
Fantastic. That's a great thing.
Which could be really unique. So you could have this person. We don't know who they are for maybe the first 3 episodes, but this person's reclusive. They live in the house next door or maybe above Keith. Because I don't imagine he lives in a house.
I'd say he's got a flat somewhere, hasn't he?
Yeah, or like there's somebody who just lives above him. Like I've seen that in films as well, which is like there's literally like you both have just like a duplex. You have somebody who like lives above you. This person is reclusive. We get an idea and a sensibility to Keith's a nice guy because he leaves groceries outside their house.
Like it.
So he helps them.
Yeah.
But we see this journey of them coming out of the shell, coming out of the house. And then you could do a whole flashback to this person who used to be recognized and admired by people around the world that they never knew. This person sacrificed the family, sacrificed her friends and everybody for glory and recognition from strangers. And this is where she led, which is very much in the wheelhouse that we're actually spinning at the moment, which is trying to get people from who you don't know from afar to acknowledge you while you ignore the people who actually matter to you. Quite a nice sub character to kind of play that little narrative out next to us.
Yeah, I like that because it also throws everything back onto the short termness of what the world was, where everything was about the next click and the next like and all of these kind of things. And if you can't click and you don't like, how can you still engage with people? So it's kind of along those ideas.
You could even have a tragic moment where this person actually hears of the hotspot and wants to go there, and the people running it are actually now saying you can come in here. We book out areas where you can try to engage with someone online, and this person might be pulled into this. And Keith's like, "What are you doing? Like, we've got this community over here. You don't need that. Like, who is that? They don't know who you are." And she's insulted because whoever might be on the other end of that may not know who you are. If they do, it doesn't matter. But then he sees her going into that hotspot, and maybe she does get somebody who connects with her, or somebody who does say like who responds to her.
Yeah.
But do they know who she is? That could be tragic then.
I like that. Yeah, because that would be tragic, and it's kind of, but also there's something kind of quite beautiful about that kind of tragedy. It's not just someone being run over. It's actually being, and like most of us spend our lives kind of conflicted. Oh, I'd love that, but I'd hate that. And so you go back into this sense because you need. So we got Keith, who's kind of like central to the community, but has always been an outsider. His story is resolved by once everyone's an outsider, it doesn't matter anymore potentially. And then your idea of the people creating a new gang of insiders around the hotspot. Does it become a trading hub? Do people exchange goods for access?
I think so. I think that's where their instinct went to, and that's probably what this actress ends up doing. She probably even betrays some people and gives away like something significant that they've been requiring in order to gain access. And basically, she kind of sold her soul for nothing. Like for the potential of a stranger's recognition. She should betray the trust of the community that has been building around her for a shot. For a chance at
a comeback or something. The comeback doesn't work. I mean, I suppose the other question is, do we need a villain? Like everyone watching this will become, but you got to have conflict.
Well, I think the villain is the more antagonizing group that Keith originally was with. Like he's going to start going against them because they're trying to pull him in, going, look, we've got the hotspot, like we've taken it over, and they're wondering where he's at and why he's not there. I think we're already building that force. I still don't know where we're going with it. But the
Mm.
benefit of a series is we don't have to have that climactic battle. Although I do think that there's something about destroying their hotspot or something. I don't know. There's something there, but I think we already have them not as the villain, but just as that antagonizing force that is trying to pull people back to the way that things were. And it just won't, it's fake. It's not a real place. It's the indication of online connection, but it's not actually real. And if you do talk to somebody for this fleeting moment, who cares? Like, where are they at? Like,
and how does it help?
Yeah. But people want that. They're like, I talked to somebody from Paris today. Did you? Yeah. What'd they say? They're like, I don't know. They spoke French.
They're hungry.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, you're right. Because then it becomes an exploration in trying to overcome the futility of being stuck in the past.
Yeah. There's something really nice.
Intriguing.
There's something nice about the reset. It's nice about the immediacy of now, the boringness of now. Like when you actually slow down, like you go on vacation, or like a lot of people would go on vacation and their goal would be to sit down and read a book in the sun. It's like, yeah, but you can do that anywhere. Like, why is this the ultimate form of relaxation is doing nothing? And it's like, I think we're telling ourselves a harsh truth when our pursuit of doing nothing is doing a lot of something to justify the nothing. And it's like, you could just have the nothing, you know?
No, the nothing is free. Yeah, I mean, I wonder then, does it mean that a new era of creativity springs up? Because if people are looking for different things to do, obviously things like gardening and producing your own food is very much about being kind of artisanal and using your hands. Do we see a new form of, I don't know, new expressions of creativity amongst people who are discovering that they didn't know they could do something? Does this come into it? Not because they've been mentally transformed somehow, but they've just got more time on their hands. And what seemingly was disastrous, if you can get shelter and food sorted, then there's a lot of time to do other things potentially. I don't know. Am I going too far?
No, I think that's the texture of the world that we're living in now. But the hotspot crew are trying to focus on reliving the past. So I actually think that they are exchanging access for money. So they're stockpiling money because they believe it'll become valuable again.
Yeah.
And that even led me to this idea where it's that actress who probably has stockpiled cash in her in that moment where she has been a recluse for decades. And then for that opportunity to access this hotspot, she brings a suitcase of it or like a briefcase of cash. But that shows this group, I bet she has more. And that actually brings them to her, which is to Keith's community. And that could actually start a rivalry where I do actually picture they burn the crops down, or like they do something drastic because they want people to need money again. They want people to like it's becoming too self-sustainable. So they're going to actually wreck that area and try to get people to like care about things that don't matter anymore. I think that actually could be very tragic and really put Keith in that middle ground where they go, you know, these people, and he's like, I don't know. But this whole thing of like they rob her completely blind. They go there and they're like, we'll take her money. And that's the betrayal that she did to exchange for that moment.
Yeah. Maybe she has a key to a place where they store things and she surrenders the key or something. Or is that a little bit too prosaic? I like the idea that she betrays the community for another shot at fame in some way. But what does she have to give them in order to get this? Yes, money. But is there something else, or what does she promise them? Because I see it. Go on.
Well, I think it's going there with some money, but it's a substantial amount, and so it could even be this question of if she's got $5,000, she probably has 20. Like she's bad. She's a bad liar. She's like, oh no, I've got a little bit more. She's a bit nervous, Nelly, about it, and so they're like, let's just follow her. And they follow her, and then they find that stockpile of money, and it could be that leads them to the area where the rest of them have all kind of put their possessions, and they don't really see the money as the interest, but this group could just take everything. Like they empty the vault, quote, the proverbial vault of the communal aspect. So she basically led that bad group to their warm and inviting community. And that sets off a rivalry between the two, which I think inevitably the hotspot crew does destroy the work that this community put in. And that kind of leads us however we want to do it, but that propels us towards some kind of climax.
It does.
But it is a series, so it doesn't have to be an all-out battle either. It could actually end with a version of forgiveness. I don't know. I'm just trying to go. It doesn't have to follow that cliche, like, oh, and then they fight on the streets for what's right.
Yeah. No, I mean, going back to the way that they bring the actress into the fold, they could cuckoo her and move into her apartment, like criminals quite often do. And every time Keith sees her, there's one of these guys in her apartment kind of thing. And he's always kept an eye out for her. And now every time he knocks on the door, someone else answers, oh, she's busy. So you could get a slow creeping tension there just to make the tragedy extendable and more tragic.
No, I think it makes sense.
Do we need more tragic figures?
Yeah, I think we would. It depends on how much more we want to expand on the different threads and the different storylines. I'm more than happy to explore some other ideas that are similar in theme. So yeah, I think you can have even maybe somebody who used to have a family, but now they're building their own family again. So somebody who's reconnecting, maybe they're reconnecting with their family. So they did separate.
And then they come back or something.
Yeah. It could even be a workaholic who's literally, he has to get offline.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden this workaholic
has got no work.
Yeah. And it's him rebuilding his relationship with his ex-wife and his children.
That would be nice. And all of these could be parallel, could they?
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of follow the different threads, and you might not see this person that you might see them in one episode for 10 minutes. Then another episode, they might take 25 minutes of it. You can follow these threads because this is the community that we're going to connect with. And then when the hot spot crew, they're going to negatively affect this community that our audience, the viewers, have been embracing and getting behind, because we're actually seeing in what we talked about at the start, this kind of simmering quietness that's kind of slowly developing. And these instigators can destroy so much of it that can actually fracture the relationships. The ex-celebrity, her relationship was fractured over this hint. The father figure who was a workaholic might get the pull to potentially help because he feels like he could add value, and he has a choice to make too now. It's like, do you stay with the family or do you pursue this opportunity of what? I don't know, but there's a very much a startup culture, the entrepreneurial startup culture of going, I'm comfortable starting with nothing or the promise that something could be there. I don't know what's around the corner, but I'm a I have the growth mindset and
yeah.
startup mentality.
Because the hotspot could be that what they do is they start renting out desks to people. So it becomes like a WeWork kind of thing where you could go in and go back to work. So like your workaholic father is torn between reconnecting with a family which has been damaged by his behavior, and then just as you think he's beginning to get back into where the audience would want him to be, once again something about the hotspot draws him in, and he's maybe he's an accountant and they need someone to start counting all their money, so they give him a job or something. It's
like the wife turns around, where were you today? And he lies to her. He was there. But what are you doing there? And it's this obsession of maybe we can get it back. Maybe we can mine the data, or we can kind of slowly kind of work through it and then unclog the system and get it back online. So you do have these characters that are being pulled, and maybe it isn't just sitting around waiting to communicate. There could be some kind of online like data kind of data work. I know I'm being very vague here because I'm literally trying to figure out this concept that we do have is like what happened to all the misused data, and it's like, well, is there a way to mine that out? And people get obsessed with it, so you actually do have these rises in community and tragic falls for the pull of online success. And it's basically, we'll keep repeating, like going back to the way things used to be. And then now you have another full character, and you have a whole family of characters.
Yeah.
But this journey of this other tragedy of this father who maybe he does. They all can't be tragic, of course. So
no,
maybe he does make the right decision in the end. But he does have that pull, and you can have an episode end with him walking by the hotspot and going in, and the audience going, no, like
what are you doing?
He's been suckered in. There's nothing there. Like it's empty.
It's empty.
But it's the promise of what it could be. It's like, you're sacrificing your world for something that doesn't really matter, So and you can continue to explore these characters and these concepts, all having different flavors, different layers of this theme of community and the here and now, the local qualities versus the globalized illusion of progress. We talk about in marketing how you can rate success with campaigns, and one of the worst things you can do is follow the vanity metrics of like likes and shares and comments. The illusion of success, that's just clicked, like they don't actually add up to anything. So you can kind of play on this, like the vanity metric aspect of like, you feel like you're getting progress, but what progress are you doing? You skipped your shift. Like the plants died because you weren't there. Like you should have been there, but you pulled an all-nighter at the hotspot, fell asleep. They robbed the plants, or some other community came by and robbed us. Like, where were you? And you can have these really nice tense moments of like fighting for what's real and what could be potentially real in the future.
No, you could do. I mean, a final thought I had about this is, would there be normally with these things, going back to something like Romero's Dawn of the Dead, inevitably just to stir things up, intruders arrive. So, or raiders, or now you've got the hotspot and you've got the hot spotters and you've got the community. Would there be like an episode where a third force come in?
I think that's a great idea, because I even accidentally landed on that when I mentioned the husband wasn't there to mind the crops, so somebody stole them, and I was like, well, that could be it. Like he wasn't there to like guard the post. People came in, but similar to any kind of predator, like I think of Jaws, like he's got a taste for this area. The shark is going to keep coming back until it's done. And so they've now have to fortify themselves against this other community. And that also has such interesting questions of like, why don't you just come in and help? Why do you work so hard to take ours when you could just help and it's yours too, you know? It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you have these points where you could have a violent scene, which I agree. I think you do need these kind of markers within a series like that, but kind of have that in the higher level conversation of like even have these emotional moments of Keith just yelling at them, like, why did you do this? Maybe Keith is the one who has to, he has to come in and maybe they kill some of the invaders and now they're standing over a dead body of some young like teenager. And it's like, why? Like Keith didn't do it, but maybe it was his gun that somebody used. And now he's standing there like, what a waste. Like we could have invited him in. Why are we fighting each other? And we're getting lessons that he's learning for the first time. And kind of dealing with his past, being associated with this crew of people, and some things he did in the past. So he could have a bit of a violent background himself. But now we're seeing with him, just the sheer I'm missing the word. It's not banality, the worthlessness of having that kind of that competitive edge against each other when collaboration and community is all that matters. Family and friends, that's it's all it is. And when you have those two, like you can build your world. And it's the pursuit of anything else that leads to destruction. And that's basically the theme that you can play on. And then it's visualized by the intruders and this potential scene where you can even have, maybe it looks like they're about to convince them to join them, and then someone gets shot, you know, and then that kicks it off. And it's like, I nearly convinced them to join us and contribute.
So
you know?
No, and it could be that, you know, that because like this is clearly speaking to bigger things, isn't it, really? And we wouldn't want it to be overly worthy. It's not preachy. So there needs to find a way of these lessons that people are learning, which really are lessons for us to learn, I guess. We need to find a way of delivering these lessons in such a way that it doesn't look like it's an advert for some kind of Christian network television or something.
I think the way you do that is just let it be visualized through the action. What you don't want to do, and you'd probably get producer notes, is where's the monologue of somebody saying that this was right or wrong? It's like, if you actually let that play out and then you have him standing over that person and he's just shaking his head, like, and you cut, you're like, that's it.
Exactly.
Could, like, where I imagine the notes would be is, why doesn't he turn around and point fingers and be like, see, this is what I told you. I told you this. We don't need that. Like, you can show, not tell. And like, I think the power of the scene, if you've constructed it and kind of earned it that way, it resonates on its own, and you don't get preachy because you literally don't have a person preaching. And a lot of modern stuff in particular has those kind of preachy monologues. And I don't even think, in my mind, I don't even imagine that it's that the writer is poor. I actually think what happens is, with this like streaming war that was going on for the past few years, it's that they're putting things into development, into production, that haven't been developed further. Whereas I would have screenplays where I have that scene of what the person means, and then at a later draft, I can kind of hide the meaning behind the action. But when I watch stuff, I go, I feel like one or two more drafts, they would have figured it out, but they had to go into production because they have a million shows that have to go out right now. So I think you can avoid the preachiness and the Christian network. Did you say?
Yeah, something like that kind of Christian network. So, I mean, because my sense with this, Chris, is that this would be an indie project. I like the idea of it, but I can't imagine that there is enough action in it for people to want to fund it in some ways. I would like, maybe then it would be interesting as a kind of like an antidote to some of the scripts that you're talking about, which are underdeveloped. This would be not overdeveloped, but developed to the right point, and maybe the episodic TV nature of it. Because I mean, it will come down to good writing. It'll come down to dialogue, effectively. And then, as you say, there will be times where dialogue is taken out and replaced with action, so that people see things that they actually hear when they're seeing them, which is what you want the people to do, rather than everybody to be told, like a character from Austin Powers or Law and Order SVU, what's going to happen next. Because it would be quite nice if it was, I mean, you know, we're both students of cinema. It would be quite fun if it had some kind of, I mean, Yasujiro Ozu is too extreme in his serenity, but some kind of sensibility that maybe spoke to European cinema, or maybe that would be a visual thing. I mean, not necessarily putting it in black and white, for example, but that would be an intriguing approach. That, I don't know, I'm kind of riffing off badly underdeveloped themes, shall we say.
No, I get it. Like, I don't feel like we need to justify a lack of action. I think if you were actually develop this out, the conflicts would naturally occur as you work it out. You can sprinkle then some actual physical action into the mix. Like, as you were speaking, I just thought of a potential another twist in the story that could lead to an actual communal conflict between the hot spotters and the and our community. Is, what if a hotspot opened up literally in our community one day?
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, well, we're choosing not to use it.
Yeah.
But that's really difficult because, well,
hey,
one,
that's a great idea.
That's going to influence the people in the community to start using it,
Yeah.
but it's also going to draw the hotspotters in to take it over.
Yeah.
And there you have conflict from within and conflict external as well.
Yeah.
And I think once you get into this, that there's loads of opportunities to create those kind of markers. So it would not be, I wouldn't imagine you're going 4 episodes in of just talk. I think you're immediately putting these aspects in where you have these moments of heightened drama and like physical altercations. It will happen because there's so much emotion that's colliding with each other, and people who have different ideas of how they should rebuild the world. So I think you could just, I think that could also be the ending, which is like the last, like the leading into the last episode, maybe the second to last episode, a hotspot opens up in that community, or maybe it's 2 episodes from the last one.
Yeah.
And the last one actually ends up being this like basically battle between the 2 communities.
Yeah.
Because there you go. There's your action piece right there.
Yeah.
And
a battle between those that want to use it and those that want to ignore it. No, that I like that. I mean, because I would want it to be an ending that doesn't really resolve itself. And you know, I like endings where they can just look like an ending, and you would signpost it as an ending, and you could, if it was a series, you could build that through the last couple of episodes as you're describing. But I would really like it to end with just kind of a stillness, like an empty street, or
I actually was thinking with this, the conflict could eventually build, I mean, the fighting itself, but also the hotspot because of the amount of use. Like, we remember in the original concept, it was through misuse of technology. So I could imagine that this conflict can be done in parallel with them trying to use this technology to the point where both hotspots break.
Yeah.
And so they've actually lost it all.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh wow, it's now you've lost it all. Now they're all back to square one.
Yeah.
The crops are destroyed, the community is broken, and you have no technology.
Yeah.
So you've got, everybody's left with nothing. Like, our personality divides have broken everything.
Yeah.
And then the very, very last bit would be somebody we don't know walking down some area we haven't seen, and a hotspot opens up, and you're like, it's gonna start again. And it's that cyclical nature of like, it's just will always be, that pull towards technology will always be there. We'll always misuse it. We'll always abuse each other for it.
Yeah.
And we'll never learn our lesson. And you kind of end with this moment where, like, we've broken the systems, the community and the technology.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
It's that quiet signal you talked about, the silence of just this, beep, and it turns on.
Perfect. I like that a lot. And then it fades to static.
Yeah. The TV just turns off.
It goes boop, like that. Absolutely. I mean, that sounds to me like all we need now is like the go ahead to start writing and $100 million.
I'm not even sure you need that much money. If you're smart and savvy with your locations, you could be doing a lot of planting in fields or taking over dilapidated areas and pretending that this is an area. But I think that's it. That's the end of it. I think
there you go. That was fun.
You've landed the plane of Cursor.
No, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed the flight. So thank you very much. And I didn't encounter any turbulence either.
Oh, lovely. So how long have you had this idea for? Like, this has been something nuggeted in your bank for a while.
I was lucky enough to see Jim Jarmusch do his masterclass at the Irish Film Institute a couple of months ago, and he was talking about the film Patterson that he made with Adam Driver. And I think I'm right, and I keep telling this story, and I hope I'm telling it right. I think from the initial idea when he wrote down a sentence to when the film was finished, it was 20 years. So this thing, Cursor, I was going back through some notes this morning looking for it. I've had it 10 years or more. Because you know what it's like when you're surrounded by films all the time. You keep thinking to yourself, oh, that would make a great film. That would make a great film. That would make a great film. And then you start thinking to yourself, I need to start writing these ideas down. So Cursor was a thing that, I've had for years. As I said, I've used some of the mythology in a book I've written called Terminal Transit, which is a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what it's like. We all have notebooks where these ideas live. My Dropbox is full of them.
Yeah. When I was your student in film school, I was working in a bar, and what I would do is when lightning would strike my little brain, I would print out like a little roll of the receipt paper and just scribble the idea down on the receipt.
Yeah.
And then I shove it in my pocket. And at the end of the night, I sometimes would have like 6 or 7 crumpled up receipt papers with just really poorly written concepts down. Yeah. I was like, they became the basis of some of that stuff became the light of day, which was the film that I wrote and sold and is available now on the Trauma Now network. Boom. Yeah. But you always have to keep those notes.
No, you have to. And
you gotta follow those pursuits.
You have to be confident enough in yourself to think, even if it's a sentence, I'll keep it because it might be handy one day. Yeah. Creativity is lifelong, isn't it? It's not 5 seconds. So I've never done anything with it. This is the furthest I've ever got with it. But So
the question now is, are you satisfied with this dirty first draft?
I like the dirty first draft. Absolutely. And it was great fun because what I also liked is the spontaneous storytelling. Because it's like kind of shadow boxing, isn't it? You got to keep moving. You can't.
Well, funny enough, I think I might have mentioned this on an episode years ago about where this idea came from. It actually started as a dinner party game when I would go meet non-creative people and they would find out I make films. And so they would say, I would love to as well. And I would just challenge them on the spot and I would ask them a series of questions, pick a genre, who's your protagonist, what's their career, is it a male or a female, what's their gender, what's the conflict. And it's so difficult to fill a blank page when you have like a million ideas. Yeah. But if I just forced you into making decisions by giving you multiple choice questions, I would get them on the road to a creative discovery. And then at some point, by just kind of grinding that engine a bit, they take off. And then all of a sudden they're just kind of pitching an idea to me. I was like, well, this is fantastic. And this this eventually became Storybreakers, where it was this is what it is now. And it's filling in the page with just options. it allows you to choose one option. Is it the data demon or is it the overload of data? Let's make a decision, because once we make that decision, it opens up a series of other questions.
Absolutely. And I think what it also allows you to do, and when people are watching this, not necessarily my episode, it allows people to see how storytelling is wholly collaborative.
Yeah.
Because it, like, you know, from people sitting around campfires supposedly in caves hiding from saber-toothed tigers to people using technology like this, the whole world has always just revolved on one person telling another person a story, and that other person either saying what happened next or I'll tell you my version. You know, that's kind of like what the world is really, isn't it?
It is. And in our story, that could happen. We could actually have a scene where people are reduced to telling each other stories next to each other.
That would be fun, wouldn't it? That would be fun. I can see it now, but that's for another episode, my friend.
That is. So yeah, I think we're gonna call a wrap on today.
Fantastic.
Dr. Barney Taylor, thank you so much for joining, and thanks for bringing the concept. That became the ingredients that we made a recipe out of.
Chris, it was a real pleasure. And, you know, I really love this series. So I really wish you all the success with it, because, like, it's series like this, which I think kind of put smiles on people's faces. So thanks for letting me come on and talk about old ideas in a new way.
Love it. That's a great phrase. Is there somewhere that people can contact you, or somewhere people could check out your work? The
best place for people to look for me is on LinkedIn. That's my biggest community. So I'm Dr. Barnaby Taylor on LinkedIn. You can find my podcast, Ripecast, RIPECAST. We are on Spotify, but LinkedIn's the best place to contact me if you're really interested in seeing what else I do, I suppose, because, you know, it's I think it's the best platform at the moment for actually just connecting with people, and I will connect with anybody who wants to connect with me, so please feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you, Barnaby, or thank you, Barney. I've always known you as Barnaby because of classes I took, so I'll never get used to Barney.
Please call me Barney. The only people that call me Barnaby are the Bank of Ireland.
Right, Barney. All right. Well, thank you so much for
Chris. Pleasure.
And for the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to learn more about Writing Chops, you can follow this YouTube channel for more insights on the art and the business side of screenwriting, or also check us out on writingchops.io, where we have free resources that help you connect and collaborate better with filmmakers and decision makers in the industry. So yeah, until next time, take care.